Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to the All New Marvel Roundup. I am Phil Parrish, and with me is...
Charlie Esser.
Alright everyone, let's dive into our Marvel reviews. Like we said, I'll start. I'll hit some really quick, and then I'll go in depth on like two of them. I got Iron Fist Living Weapon number 9. It continues the story of, I don't know, the big villain is Danny Rand's father. I don't know if he's supposed to have been like resurrected as some kind of monster or something, or that's what he appears to be. Yeah, it's hard. It's kind of hard to tell what's real in the story and what like he's hallucinating. So
so it's sort of like that Freudian stories where my father monster is attacking me and I must slay him to become the man.
And like wait and see, wait till the last part to see what's real and what's not.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Yeah. And then I'm still giving that a thumbs up, but
yeah.
the Legendary Star-Lord number 9. It's part 3 of Black Vortex. Continues where Guardians left off. Gamora and the present day Beast of the X-Men have used the Black Vortex to like kind of power up. And they're like, oh, you should all do it. Telling the Guardians and the X-Men, you should all power up. You won't believe what you're missing. And
oh boy,
Peter Quill.
Did they just say no?
It kind of makes him seem like no, but like Peter Quill was considering it, and then Kitty Pryde got all mad at him. And was like, because they're kind of dating. She was like, I can't believe you're the kind of person who would consider that and consider magic shortcuts and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Because
mutant power shortcuts, that's fine, but magic.
Well, I guess she's saying you can't help it if you're born with them, but if you like dunk yourself in the magic mirror or something.
I see. Okay.
Still thumbs up, but then I got Nova 27. Carnage figured out who Nova was, Sam Alexander, so Sam gets his little sister to fly around in the Nova helmet.
So is Carnage still evil, or is he?
He's back to being evil.
Oh, good.
He had been reverted, but he's back.
Good. Because he was one of those good guys who just did not fit well into the idea of being a good guy.
Yeah, and Carnage is all like telling Nova. The Nova helmet's busted after the Hulk fight, so it keeps cutting in and out, but Carnage keeps telling him, he's like, how are you going to defeat me? He's like, I've dragged the Hulk into space during Axis.
Yeah.
I think I can handle you. So, no, there's a funny scene in this when he takes Carnage to Raker's Island, and the cops are like, you can't just drop him off here. They're like, there's due process and stuff, and Nova's like, what does Spider-Man do? And Carnage is like, he just dropped me and swings away. So Nova's just like, okay, and drops him and flies away.
Yes. Well, there is due process, but you drop them off. I'm sure Cassidy has some outstanding warrants, so they can hold him. They just got to run him,
Yeah, and the last 2 pages are probably the best because Sam goes to try to find help for fixing the Nova helmet. He goes to the Beast of the X-Men first. He says he can't help him, maybe after he examined it for a few weeks. So Sam keeps going. He goes to San Francisco to see Tony Stark and gets the door slammed in his face.
Because he's all superior now.
Superior jerk, yeah. And so then he flies to the Baxter Building, hoping to find the Fantastic Four. But guess who's in the abandoned Baxter Building?
The Hulk.
Yeah, Doc Green. Don't call him Hulk.
Yeah, he does not like to be called Hulk.
No, and then so that's going to be continued in Nova Annual 1.
Oh boy.
And then but that was a thumbs up. Black Widow 15 continues the story. She's fighting a terrorist group called Chaos. Wasn't that from Get Smart?
Yes, that was, and I wonder if that is intentional. That do they play it at all for humor or no?
It doesn't seem like it. No, they make them seem pretty threatening. So I was like, well, why don't you call them something other than Chaos?
Actually, I think Bond fought a group called Chaos too. It just might be one of those universal names, sort of like Cobra. There's a DC Cobra and a Marvel Cobra, and Cobra everywhere, So yeah, Chaos. Why not?
But she gets some help from the Winter Soldier.
Yay! Took a break from his star-spanning adventures too.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's back on Earth.
It's Marvel. They do that,
Continuity. Well, DC's starting it like that too. Continuity. What is that?
Well, it's the idea is that not all these stories take place at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although when with the Fantastic Four on the run just before this last one when they were going through space and time and Reed Richards points out that I do have a space time machine that I'm flying around the universe in. So yes, I am with the Illuminati and back with my family and doing everything all at once. So why not?
I would just like a online guide or something that tells you exactly what order to read stuff in. Because sometimes I like to read a couple different books at once,
I'm surprised there isn't one, but I guess probably what happens is that you would because it probably takes a few weeks or months to sort them into chronological order, and by that time, who cares, Because you got to see, okay, so this is happening. So based on this factor, we can say this was happening here and there and there. They actually do publish those on occasion. Marvel will give you their official timeline, but like a year or two later, where they're going to show you here's how all the story. And I forget what they call those, but not the Marvel Omnibus, but they've printed them a few times where they give you the precise timeline reading order for when stories took place in the official Marvel canon.
Yeah, but they have so many books. I think they would need someone full time just to take track continuity.
Well, I think there actually is someone who has that job at Marvel, and I do think they have it amongst themselves. They just don't publish it because then you're going to say, oh, well, since this is happening here, then this character must have had this happening, Yeah.
Don't
want to give the spoilers.
I was going to say, if there's someone who just does that, I'll take that job.
Oh, yeah. Like you walk into that job. Actually, it's probably an intern, honestly.
Probably. I was going to say, that sounds like a work-at-home job.
Yeah. No, it's... the problem with it is like you're like, oh yeah, I'll do Moon Knight and that, but then you gotta, now I gotta do Rocket Raccoon, and how does this? I have to say I do love the new Rocket Raccoon series, and I would be reviewing it tonight, except I did not have the chance to finish reading it yet. Too many books this week. This was a heavy book month, heavy book week.
Yeah, but the Black Widow, I give it a thumbs up, but. All right, let's get into the two that you didn't read that I wanted to get into. Uncanny X-Men 31 with a very misleading cover. It's Cyclops and Havoc like fighting on a rooftop, but meanwhile Havoc appears nowhere in this issue.
Oh, that's how they get you.
I don't know if they mean it for like the next issue or something, because this is like the end of they were reading Xavier's will. Yeah. And then they find out about the new powerful mutant who can't like control his powers and just like kills people. Just like
another one of those.
Yeah, because Xavier used his mental powers to like block his access to his powers, but now with Xavier dead, the guy killed Scott Summers, Emma Frost, and then basically came to the Jean Grey school and killed everyone there.
So this guy has already killed Scott Summers in this book.
Oh, he killed just about everybody. But that Eva Bell went back in time. She brought Xavier to the present, but then they went back in time and they fixed the situation in the easiest way. This new destructive mutant they went back in time, and Xavier just used his mental powers to keep his parents from ever getting together.
Wow. Okay.
And then he tells Eva Bell that I didn't know he had this power. He can use his mental powers to make himself forget what happened.
Sure.
That's what he says.
Well, go along with it. That's going to get retconned later. You know that. He's going to I can't make myself forget things. What are you talking about?
Well,
what they're going to say is, no, actually, I didn't make myself forget, but I knew you'd be worried about it. But I'm just such a disciplined, guy constantly that I'm going to react as if I didn't know, even though I know exactly what happens in the future now.
Well, he's still dead in the present. This was past Xavier, and he said he didn't want to know. He said he's seen too much of the future already.
Yeah.
But anyway, so now everyone's alive again in the future and didn't have to go running after this mutant. So they're reading Xavier. She-Hulk's the executor of the will. So.
Yeah. Yay, She-Hulk.
And Xavier left everything to Cyclops, and everyone's like, "Oh, what the hell? He wouldn't have left that if he knew what you would have become."
Yeah.
So Eva Bell chews him out, and then so Cyclops comes back in the mansion, and because the will said if anything happened to Cyclops, then Storm was supposed to get everything, and Cyclops comes back in and he just gives everything to Storm and walks off. And he closed his school, his new Xavier school, because he told all the students to go to the Jean Grey school.
So he's getting ready for his final showdown with his now evil brother.
You would think, but I thought they showed after wasn't it like the last issue of Axis that him and didn't they look pretty chummy, hugging and everything?
Well, yeah, but that's because Scott's evil because he's made a choice to be evil, whereas Havoc's just evil because he got his mind switched. So to give you an example, it's the difference between, say, Doctor Doom and Dr. Octopus in some in some versions of the story. Some versions of the story, Dr. Octopus used to be just a totally nice guy, and then when he got bonded with his cybernetic armor, it drove him mad, or his cybernetic arms, it drove him mad, and that's why he became evil. Dr. Doom made active choices in his life to be evil, and does not see his actions as evil, but as for the greater good of society. So Scott is evil because he thinks this is what is best for mutant society. Havoc is evil because someone went and flipped all the switches in his brain. So they can get along because, right now we're both going to be evil, but eventually they're going to say, well, we are two completely different brands of evil. So I don't like you no more, brother.
Yeah, Cyclops is just the new Magneto.
Well, exactly. Yeah, well, because, they have to make Magneto nicer now because he's got such a great actor playing him, and, no one cares who was playing Scott, so... they're like, yeah, we'll just make Scott evil because no one cares about that guy. Yeah.
All right, but yeah, it was decent. I'll give that a lukewarm thumbs up.
Even with the She-Hulk reference, even with the She-Hulk appearance.
But in this issue, she was only in it for like a page or two,
See, that would be enough for me.
Oh, have a crush on the She-Hulk, do we?
Oh, I love the She-Hulk. She's the best.
You and John Byrne, man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the She-Hulk's mind. Her gamma-charged legal mind.
Gamma-charged legal mind.
Yeah. See, they never really talk about that she's possibly a better lawyer as She-Hulk than is Jen Walters. You don't know, but it's sometimes implied.
I can see that.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
And the next book.
All right, the last one I wanted to jump into, the one I read, was Moon Knight 12. It's the last one by this creative team, Brian Wood and Greg Smallwood. Well, Khonshu, the ancient Egyptian god, does he give Moon Knight his abilities, or it seems like...
Well, that's always that interesting question with Moon Knight, is Khonshu actually even there?
Yeah, because...
that's always the question with Moon Knight, is anything that Moon Knight is dealing with, is it really there, or... But, I mean, his official origin was that, yes, Khonshu, a god like any other god, grants him his powers. Except I don't think there actually is an Egyptian god called Khonshu, and I think that was a point of contention at some point in his storyline. But yeah, so Khonshu officially gives him his powers, depending on the writer.
Yeah, because Khonshu was going to move on to, this woman who was Moon Knight's psychiatrist who who's from this African country. She claims her father was killed by this warlord, but meanwhile her father was the old warlord who was killed by the new warlord.
So she was lying.
Yeah, but there was like no good people there. But so the issue opens with Mark Spector falling out of an airplane. It's all like, I don't know what to do, until Khonshu's like, okay, I'll give you another chance, and then all of a sudden he could fall from the plane into a river and survive.
Well, I remember from the old Marvel universe, when he's at his peak power, he actually is class 100 strength. He's actually in the old Marvel guidebook. Moon Knight's actually freaking powerful when he's in Khonshu's good graces. He's kind of like he's kind of like Captain Britain in that way, where depending on the situation, his powers are nearly limitless.
Because I thought back in the day he had powers, but then I thought he was just more like human-like.
Yeah. Well,
like later on.
Well, back in the early '80s, when his original Marvel Universe Handbook explanation was his powers depended on the phase of the moon, and during a new moon, he's just a super athlete. However, when you get to a full moon, he's like at Hulk level, strong and fast, and he's just the ultimate superhero. So it's, but that's of course only one night a month, and then the rest of the month he's either waxing or waning in his power level. That was the 80s, man. Moon Knight has he used to quote unquote have a straightforward origin, which was that he was a millionaire who was, I believe he was doing mercenary work just for fun because he was kind of an adrenaline junkie. Then he finds the ancient temple of Khonshu, who grants him the Moon Knight powers, and goes on to become a costumed adventurer. I believe.
All right. You know what? Let's save this conversation. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you must tune into this week's Super Connectivity podcast.
Sorry, man. Getting off track.
Tease them.
Tease them.
Tease them. No, tease them.
Check back in for Super Connectivity.
You gotta get both shows.
Okay. So what happens with Moon Knight? Come on, don't leave us hanging.
Well, that's the thing. I like this team. I like the story, but like he goes in, he stops the woman from killing the warlord, and as they do a lot. This team, the issue kind of abruptly ends. He stops her, the issue ends.
Okay.
Doesn't show him taking her into custody or anything. She just stops her, and that's it.
Well, that saves the explanation. That saves the paperwork,
Yeah, but this series, he's been he says he's defending his fellow travelers of the night. Because they had him investigating some kind of haunting in one issue and stuff. But I think the new team's bringing back a superhero costume, because a lot of these issues he's been running around just in a white suit and a mask. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, like so many superheroes, sometimes they have to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, but I give that a thumbs up.
Yeah. So thumbs up, though. So even abrupt stop, it's thumbs up. It makes one wonder when you think about, which we'll get into later, when you think about Moon Knight's mental issues, like whether or not if you're having those abrupt stops, if there's between book stories that will give another explanation for what happened at the end there, that they can and maybe they do that intentionally to leave these open spots between the stories where they can tell another story later,
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All right, well, what did you read this week, Charlie?
Well, of course, I read the final issue of Soule's She-Hulk, and kind of sad, but really fascinating in a way. And let me tell you why. Okay, so for those of you who haven't been following She-Hulk, you're too late. But this was a great wrap-up book where they basically answer the big question, which was, what is the blue file? And annoyingly, they then open up what I guess would have happened in the 13th issue if we were going to get one, and that sounded pretty awesome too. But at the end of this, basically what we find out is that there is a what they call a D-list 90s superhero called Nightwatch, by the name of, I believe his name is Henry Trench.
Yes.
Who who was this superhero who's got this really crazy time travel based history where he happens upon this superhero who gets killed by these terrorists, and then he realizes that this superhero is himself, so he steals the superhero's costume and then goes and hides, thinking, well, if I never put on the costume, I'll never get killed. And then for whatever reason, he puts on the costume, has an ongoing story, has several things happen, winds up falling into this loop again where he eventually does get killed. But what's weird about that is, and here's what's interesting, okay? When we're watching this storyline unfold, because, okay, so big spoiler. Night Watch used to be called the Night Eater and was a villain, heretofore unknown. And all of the adventures that we think Night Watch has had were all just a crazy retcon created because Dr. Druid, who was somehow a bad guy in this already, even though I thought he died after he turned evil in Avengers, but maybe that's a whole other bag of hammers. Dr. Druid, the Shocker, and Vibro help him to create this magical spell to wipe an entire town out of existence so that he can rewrite his own history so that he was a hero, not a villain. And he does this purely for the selfish reason that he realized that being a villain is a bad life plan, that it always ends poorly, but if you're a hero, you can become a millionaire. And if you just be a nice D-list hero, you can have all the advantages of being a hero without actually having to, hero and get called for the end of the world stuff, So, which is which is about the most evil motivation you can think of. I want to be a hero, not because I actually want to stop doing evil, but just because it seems like a cool gig. And in his defense, quote unquote, literally in his defense, what he defends himself is, well, since I stopped that, I've been a doctor and been doing charity work and doing all these wonderful things. But he killed an entire town of people to get that. And here's what is interesting. Here's what is interesting about this thing. In all of the adventures of Night Watch that we've seen, he's never had shadow tendrils. In this issue, and actually the few times we've seen him, his powers have related to shadow tendrils. He's had these shadow tendrils coming out of his trench coat, to seek out his revenge, or that's how his powers are working. What's interesting about this is shadow tendrils are the power of the Void, and the Void is a being that had the power the Sentry. His power was, of course, as suggested in some books, his power was the ability to retcon all of history to write himself into it. And so what you're seeing here is this character doing Void-like powers with a Void-like storyline where he's rewriting history. In this case, unlike the Sentry storyline where you think he's a hero and then it's revealed that he's not. This is a guy who was not a hero and now reveals himself to be one. It makes me wonder if this is meant intentionally to tie into the Sentry and the Void and where that might go next. Because I am a huge fan of the character of the Sentry. I read The Age of the Sentry, which is without a doubt one of the best parts of the Sentry storyline. I mean, the first book of the Sentry is very good. The first Sentry series is really nice. Later Sentry work is kind of cool. But The Age of the Sentry, where Reed Richards is really getting into an analysis of the Sentry while he's reading old comic books to Franklin at bedtime, is such a fascinating, total nerd bait, just to get into that. But so this to me was a great ending for the book. I wish it was continuing because we find out that the next issue theoretically would have been the Inhumans getting sued by the city of New York. Because I guess Medusa attacked the UN, which I'm guessing happened in the Axis storyline. And She-Hulk, of course, is the Inhumans lawyer because she's on retainer for a lot of people, who are, crazy, who are superheroes, but, they don't get to use her as much because the only hero that ever winds up getting arrested for stuff, I guess, is probably Spider-Man, and he has no money. But, so we don't get that story, and I would love to see that. But we do get a hint that Howard the Duck is renting office space in that same spot for his upcoming series. So we're hoping we'll get to see She-Hulk and Patsy Walker and Angie and Hi again in Howard the Duck series on occasion. So that's my hope for that. So big thumbs up for the end of She-Hulk, except big thumbs down for it being the end of She-Hulk. So that's what I'm going to say on that book. Have anything you want to add there, Phil?
No.
I know I got crazy on that one, but anytime I see a Sentry reference, I get real excited. I was very fascinated when Sentry came back in an Uncanny X-Men, or not Uncanny Avengers, and then was disappointed that they did like almost nothing with him after he comes back. He comes back, he fights Thor, and then, okay, we've brought back the most controversial and interesting character the Marvel Universe has ever produced, and we're just going to leave him over there. Why not? But anyway, so fans of the Sentry and other Sentry-seeking nerds like myself, pick up that last issue of She-Hulk and be in awe of what might be hidden between the pages. Next book I read was the most recent issue of Loki. And I don't even know if he's the agent of Asgard anymore. I just think it's just Loki. And for those who are unaware, the big reveal that Loki, the big secret, the crime that will not be forgiven, has been revealed to all of Asgard. That the Loki who looks like Kid Loki is really old Loki, who killed Kid Loki by forcing Kid Loki to eat his own soul, which is, it's weird and it doesn't make any sense. But this is one of the most interesting things about the Loki book is, again, it gets very much into the weeds of what it means to be a mythological figure. And what is interesting here, because of course Loki has been through the ringer with the whole inversion and his own quest to be a better Loki, and because for those who forget, the whole reason Loki staged the siege was to get himself removed from history, and he wanted himself removed from history because he did not want to have to be bound by the rules of Ragnarok and the rules of everything that they had to deal with. And so he broke out of it, and he broke the cycle of Ragnarok, broke everything, broke all of Asgard, just so that Asgardians could make their own futures and histories. And of course they have done that to a grand extent. But then within that same thing, Loki wound up having to infuse himself with his younger self and force his younger self to kill himself, and then he took over the body of his younger self, which is this thing because he is both young Loki and old Loki at the same time, and we have another character in the book who is Loki from the future, or so he says. And this is because this is something that we'll get into a bit with superconnectivity about Marvel's completely fractured, messed up timeline right now, and how I really think it has gotten very much to the point where it's intentional and putting a lampshade on it. That, okay, our universe is broken, and it looks more broken because we are breaking it more and more to show how broken everything is. Because essentially what has happened is Loki's been revealed. All of Asgard, including Volstagg, who was Loki's like big defender, they all turn their backs on him. They all hate him, and Lady Sif included, but she makes this point to Volstagg when Volstagg is telling her, don't waste time on him. She says, look, Loki squatted in my body for months. I would know him in any form, anywhere. And that Loki, I don't know. And that's an interesting point, because Loki is in his lowest depths. Because of, in many ways, the manipulations of the All-Mother, the manipulations of old Loki, and just the manipulations of the storytellers themselves to make Loki be what they want Loki to be, not what Loki wants to be. And, it's a grand tale, that is unfolding here as we move towards the end of the Marvel Universe. And I'm going to give it a big thumbs up. There's so much more I could talk about just this book for an hour, much like I talked about She-Hulk for about an hour. There's so much going on, not the least of which is the suggestion that old Loki, who is theoretically Loki's future self, who promised the All-Mother this great future for Asgardia, if if she would help him allow all the future, all of history to unfold the way he knows it to be. And in many ways, you can see that she has been fooled by old Loki. But old Loki makes this point when he first meets Verity Wells, who is Loki's friend, who can see through any lie, that he is pleased to make her acquaintance, suggesting that he had never met her before. Which you could say, oh well, he's saying that because as old Loki, he has never met her, except that if he really was young Loki, then he would have met her when he was young Loki. And actually what I think is most interesting is I find that old Loki's behavior, it's very, reminds me a lot of, and I don't mean this as an insult, but it's like Jim Carrey in The Riddler, where he's very bouncy and jokey and gaggy, everything he does. And, you know, that little giggliness, that you would associate with that kind of character, which is not the way old Loki used to be. This is very much, to me, kid Loki in an old man's body. And I get the feeling that there's this reversal of fortune somewhere in this storyline where the kid Loki spirit is inhabiting the old Loki body, and that's where things are getting kind of eluded with our fractured timeline and everything seeping through. We can go from that into Ms. Marvel, which again has Kid Loki, and shows how interesting it can be when when a character is being written by someone else. And Loki's one of these characters who, you know, especially young Loki, I think he gets written to the scene he's in. And in this case, he's sent in a scene that seems very separate from everything we just read in Loki. Sent by the All-Mother down to Jersey City to find out if any of the inventor's acolytes had a device that might be able to pierce to Asgardia and lead to some sort of an invasion and further destruction of the worlds, etc. And he goes there, and of course it's the Valentine's Day dance at Ms. Marvel's prom, or Ms. Marvel's high school, and he spikes the punch with Asgardian truth serum so that everyone starts saying exactly what they feel. And of course, all the teenagers start telling the truth to their dates, and fights break out and chaos ensues. And Ms. Marvel defeats Loki, who is explaining that he's just trying to do good, and he's just trying to find ways. He's trying to find ways to win battles without having to go to blows, to find other ways to do it. And it keeps on backfiring on him. Now this is something that's not really something that you've seen in any other depiction of Loki, but here it works for the story and it moves our story forward. It gives Ms. Marvel another chance to do a little soapboxing, if you will. You can definitely see this is a book that's sort of being written. I don't want to say out of continuity, because it is in continuity. But it is definitely written for its audience and is taking an approach for its audience that is probably separate from what most people would think about for its continuity. I'm definitely giving it a thumbs up. Although I am going to say that right now, I think we've had 2 books in a row where Kamala gets on a soapbox and starts preaching about this and that and the other. And I do wonder if every issue is going to have her taking a moment out to give some kind of message, one to grow on kind of message. And I don't think we need that every issue. It's only been 2 issues that we've gotten it, but because we got it twice in a row, once with the capper, it was kind of cool for the last arc, but now in the filler issue getting it, it's like, maybe I would have just rather have seen something a little more action oriented, or even just more of an exploration of Kamala's relationship with Bruno, which, is that ambiguous high schooly relationship between people of the opposite sex who are good friends, and they don't really know if what they feel is love or friendship or, hormones, and having to deal with that, which to me, I think that might have even been a better story than throwing Loki in there. But hey, Loki's a star, so you want to put him in your book if you get the opportunity. So that is Ms. Marvel, which brings us out of all of the happy books and into Captain America: Fear Him, which I I'm more and more convinced that this was meant to be the first arc of Captain America and Nomad, but that they decided maybe for time reasons that they couldn't make this the first arc, and so they put out the Captain America book we do have, and then put this as sort of a prequel to that. Because
was that one? Was it like a digital first series maybe?
I don't know. I don't read the digital books because I'm old.
Yeah, neither do I. But I thought I heard maybe that had maybe come out digitally first. Oh. Maybe that's why it seems behind.
Well, I guess to me what it seems about it is that it's definitely set it seems to be definitely set in an earlier time. It's set in a point where Cap and Nomad are just starting out, and again, as when we get into Captain America, we know how this all ends, or at least how they're implying that it ends, and. Here we have, Captain America, Sam Wilson. He's been exposed to the fear gas and he is freaking out. And he spends half the issue fighting with Nomad, who he sees as this crow in knight's armor. And although there was a great scene when, basically what's happening is, Sam and Nomad are fighting the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow is obsessed with convincing Nomad Ian to feel that he needs to make this being feel fear because he knows it's going to be so amazing once this kid feels fear. And Sam has been exposed to the gas and he's freaking out, but he's also controlling it at times and trying to fight it. And he uses it at one point to command all of the crows to get out of the sewers, which was a very cool scene because you see him sort of reach out to the birds and make them leave, and it's done very stunningly visually, but then he starts falling back into his own insanity again from the fear gas. And what's kind of bugging me in this is that we are really putting Sam through the ringer on this. And Sam has already been put through the ringer, first in Mighty Avengers with evil Sam in Axis. Then we have what's going on in the Captain America book, which, is a whole other thing. And now in this where we're exposing him to the fear gas and having him freak out. I read the previews for next week, and there's a nice bit in there about why Scarecrow is so obsessed with Ian, which is that, with Sam, he can overcome his fear because he's been doing this his whole life and he's been an adventurer for so long. He'll fear, but he can rise above his fear. Whereas Ian has never felt fear, and he says when Ian feels fear, he's just going to collapse, and that's going to be glorious. And so I feel like they gave Sam a little something in that, oh yes, he can rise above his fears, so he lives with fear, but he can overcome them. But, and although Cap has been through all these kind of rough spots too, he's got, we all remember the great crystal meth series when he loses his powers, when he gets, when the crystal meth bonds with the super soldier serum and he starts acting crazy. He's been through these kind of dark
Streets of Poison,
great series where we get to first meet Crossbones, so Cap has been through this, but it just seems like Sam is getting it every issue. It's, let's put another thing on them. I mean, it's a good issue. It's a strong issue. It's a great, and I'm loving the backstory on Sam and Nomad, but I'm like, can we please give Sam a win? And of course, now we go into Captain America, All New Captain America, which we both read. And are we getting any wins in this one, Phil? What'd you think?
Well, they just keep throwing everything but the kitchen sink at them. But we got the Cobra and Armadillo.
Yes. So we got.
That reminds, you were talking about Streets of Poison. That reminds me of Mark Grunwald's run.
Yeah. So what's good in this? So we get to see Sam, when he's dealing with Armadillo and and again, we're seeing Sam getting jabbed by Cobra. First he gets, beaten by Armadillo, then he's getting jabbed by Cobra. And again, it's that he keeps on getting up and keeps on fighting. And he does reach out to Armadillo trying to say, come on, man, you can't be like this. I know who you are. And he like tells him his origin, and he says, I know you're not a guy who's going to commit genocide. You're not a guy who's going to commit mass murder like this. And, he does reach out to him and actually gets the villain to flip around and save the day. And really Armadillo becomes the hero of this because he tells Sam where the stuff is and how to defeat it. And, and that's great. And that's great to see Sam do that. I'm Captain America. I'm going to inspire you to be a better person thing. But at the same time, then we actually get to Sam's final battle in Florida with Zemo, and it does not go well.
Not from that last page, it doesn't look like
No,
it.
well, yeah. And granted, okay, last page, intentional cliffhanger, America destroyed, Captain America stabbed with a sword, all these things. Clearly that's where we're going, but, and we know probably Sam is going to pull this out at the end. But man, they are just wringing it out of Sam on this. They are just, and part of me is like, okay, they don't want to pull any punches because they don't want to say, oh, they're just being nice to Sam because he's the first black Captain America and we don't want people, and they just want to be showing, there's this line because there's basically two ways you can look at it. One way you can say, oh, they're just treating Sam so poorly in the stories because he's black, and they're just gonna just run through the ringer so that when Cap comes back, everyone say, yeah, that's who should be, is Steve Rogers, and you had that sort of when they kind of ousted Captain Marvel from the leadership of the Avengers and put Cap back in charge of the Avengers, where they kind of did something like that to Captain Marvel, where they basically had Cap, they basically had her have some bad days, and then Cap said, get back into the kitchen, lady, let me lead the Avengers. And it's a pretty bad scene. And I kind of get shades of that with what they're doing here. But at the same time, I think also they may be saying, no, we're not going to treat Sam with kid gloves just because he's the black Captain America. We're going to give him the full Captain America experience, which is you got to be facing insurmountable odds constantly, and everything's got to be going to hell in a handbasket, and you rise above because you're Captain America. And he will, because obviously he's going to defeat Zemo. He's going to defeat the Scarecrow. He's going to get out of this. But it just seems, and they're not, but it seems like because it's in such a condensed space, it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable reading it. It's like, man, when are they going to give Sam a break? When are they going to let Sam be just the Captain America that as the icon? They're making him earn it. But I guess my hope is that after this, he's really going to have that respect and that earned status as Captain America, and then they can let him hold on to this spot for at least a year before they magically give Steve his powers back. Except the universe ends next week or in 3 months, so we'll see what happens then. Oh boy. But I'm still going to give it a thumbs up. It's a great issue. It's a strong issue. Oh, yeah. I mean, it is, honestly, I would say that was probably just for pure comic book excitement and fun. I would say it was probably the best issue I've read so far this week. But man, I want Sam to get it. After this, I want one issue where Sam, he's like, gets a parade and gets a cup of coffee and everyone's saying, "Hey, Captain America, you're the best," because he deserves it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, remember Captain America 371? It was, the whole issue was like Steve Rogers out on a date with Diamondback.
Oh yeah, Sam needs that. Let's bring Jet Black back, and they can have a nice little date.
There you go.
Speaking of Jet Black, this is the other thing that was weighing on me about this issue. We've gone way over our time, I know, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we do this in Super Connectivity?
Okay, so we'll hit that on Super. So again, listen to Super Connectivity to find my final thoughts on the Captain America. Oh, I don't even know what this was, but 4. All New Captain America number 4, because there's final thoughts in Super Connectivity. Okay.
Yes, that's where we go in depth.
We're gonna try at least. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
But. Yes, all right, everyone, you want to get a hold of us, you can email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com, or on Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp, and Charlie, where can they get a hold of you?
Superconnectivityblog@gmail.com, or you can follow me at Charlie Esser on Twitter. And of course, like my Facebook page, and which is Charlie Esser in Newark, and you can search by the email superconnectivityblog@gmail. And yeah, that's where we're at. And definitely follow us. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, and listen to Super Connectivity for more in-depth thoughts on these issues and more.
Everything. Okay.
So,
I've been Charlie Esser.
And I've been Phil Parrish for the All New Marvel Roundup.